Hi, my name is Mark. So many times when we learn a scale, one of the things that we do is we learn the chords of that scale. And usually if we have a 7-note scale, we have 7 chords. You take each note of the scale and you play it with its third and fifth, and those are the main chords of that scale. And you take one of the chords and substitute one note for another note of the scale, you're creating another chord, which becomes an extension of the chord you have, or an extension of another chord in the scale. But depending on the scale you're using, you may be missing some chords. Some secret chords, if you will. And knowing these secret chords can open a lot of possibilities. Many times they work really well for modulations and for your general composing and songwriting, but it can also be really cool for that odd note, outside sounding soloing. I know this all sounds a little bit weird, so let me just show you. But before I do, I just want to say please subscribe to my channel. You're probably aware that YouTube's been acting a little bit weird lately. Even if you subscribe to the channel videos may really not show up in our subscription box. And even if you ring the little notification bell thingy below, you still really will not be notified of the channel's content. So if you want to stay tuned to the videos, you really should subscribe and turn on all the notifications. But since that may or may not work, I highly suggest you follow me on social media. Not only do I post some exclusive stuff there, like improvised solos and jamming over backing tracks, and usually wherever I'm up to at the moment, but I always post there about my videos. Links for the usual suspects will be below, like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but in general, at Mark Guitar. Oh, and since you're down there, please consider leaving a like and perhaps share this video on social media. I'd highly appreciate it. So yeah, I guess now we can get straight into it. Okay, so here's what I mentioned about having secret chords in a scale. And by the way, if you're not really sure of anything I talk about in this video, I've done some other videos talking about that, which you can check out right there. Oh, and I should mention that even though I'm talking about this, other guys have talked about this before, like Rick Piatto, but it is something that I use a lot and I think I should talk about and show it to you guys. Let's look at the harmonic minor, for instance. Let's take C harmonic minor. For those who don't know, the harmonic minor scale is just your natural minor scale, but with a natural seventh instead of a minor seventh. So instead of having, you have, and just by changing that note, we're changing many of the chords. The most blatant example would be, we don't have a flat 7 major chord. We don't have a B flat major anymore. We now have a B diminished. But if we look at perhaps an interesting chord in the key of C harmonic minor, would be the F minor chord. Because now, instead of the F corresponding to a Dorian scale, we have a Dorian sharp 4. Because we have a sharp 4, which sounds the same as a diminished fifth, and we have an actual sixth, this F minor chord can turn into an F diminished. Now, technically, in the key of C harmonic minor, the F chord is an F minor chord, not an F diminished. For it to be an F diminished chord, when we play the scale, this note would have to be the fifth, and this note would have to be the seventh. But it isn't. If we play the scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, this is the fourth, not the 5. This is the 5. So when we play it, this is the chord we get. We get an F minor. We have the root, the minor third, and the natural fifth. Even though within the scale we can substitute the fifth for the fourth, which in this case is a sharp 4, we can't call the F chord in the key of C harmonic minor an F diminished chord. In the key of C harmonic minor we can play this chord, and it's a chord within the scale, but it's not the F chord in the scale. It's not the natural chord, but it's a secret chord. This is what I meant when I talked about secret chords, which are chords that are in the scale, and are chords that you use a lot. I mean, especially in those more Latin genres, you've definitely heard this chord progression. And as I said before, this chord is in the key of C harmonic minor, but in the key of C harmonic minor, this chord wouldn't be an F diminished chord. In this chord, you're playing an F, a fourth, a sixth, and a third. This chord, in the key of C harmonic minor, would technically be a B diminished chord, but in the second version. But since it sounds like an F diminished chord, And since it looks like an F diminished chord, you can perhaps modulate from the key of C harmonic minor to perhaps F sharp major by using that pseudo F diminished chord as the diminished 7th chord of the key of F sharp major. So you can go from C minor to F sharp major with just one chord. Now you're in the key of F sharp major. Another chord in the key of C harmonic minor would be the E flat chord. When we had a natural minor scale, we had an E flat major chord. Well, now we have an E flat augmented. And because augmented chords are symmetrical and you can move them on major thirds, one of those inversions is a B augmented chord. And even though in this case it's not a B augmented chord, it's an E flat augmented chord on the second inversion, you can still take this chord as a B augmented and use it, for instance, as an altered 5 chord to modulate to E minor. So it could be in C minor, for instance. Right there you did a modulation to E minor without really having to change many of the chords. I chose the C harmonic minor scale because it's a scale that many of you will probably know, but taking a scale that you definitely know, like the C major scale, the C major scale doesn't have as many opportunities for you to do that, but a good example in the key of C major would be again the F chord, which in the key of C, the F would correspond to a Lydian scale. In the key of C major, the chord corresponding to the F would be an F major chord, because when you get the 3rd and the 5th, you have 1, 2, 3. The 3 is a major 3rd, and the 5th, 3, 4, 5. The chord of the F note in the key of C major would be an F major chord. But again, in this case, even though you don't really have the minor 3rd, what you do have is the sharp 4th and the major 6th. And again, this isn't really a complete diminished chord, we're missing the minor 3rd. But we can do this, and I'm doing a throwback to a video I did a couple of weeks ago, which is the 4th episode of my 8 series, where I take a look at questions you guys leave in the comment section below, where I talk about the Hungarian major scale, which is a weird sort of bluesy scale. You can check that video out in the card section right there. And that scale is a scale that has the root, of course. It has a sharp 9, a major 3rd, a sharp 4, a 5th, a 6th, and a minor 7th. So it sounds sort of like this. Which, even though sounds a little bit weird, it can be used, as I mentioned before, for some bluesy licks. That scale has pretty much the same deal we were talking about before. If we take the root, the 4th, and the 6th of that scale, we almost have a diminished chord. And in this scale, again, we don't have a minor 3rd. 1, 2, 3. This is the 3rd of our scale, which is a major 3rd. But our second note, our 9th, is a sharp 9th. This is our regular 9th. This is a sharp 9th. And even though it's in the same spot a minor 3rd would be, in this scale it's a 9th. But look what happens if we wanted to have a sus2 chord. Our regular sus2 would be a chord like this. But in this scale, this would be our sus2 chord. In the context of a scale, it's a sus2 chord, but it looks and sounds like a minor chord, because it's no different than a minor chord. So just by changing a couple of notes and being C major, in the place where the F major chord would fit in, you can grab an almost diminished chord. If we slightly modulate to a key like the Hungarian major scale, we have a diminished chord that really isn't a diminished chord. And we have a minor chord that really isn't a minor chord. so you can do some crazy modulations without really thinking much about it. Again, taking back to the 4th episode of my 8 series, I promised I'd do a video about the Hungarian minor scale, and I will definitely do one eventually, because it's my favorite scale and the one I use the most. But the Hungarian minor scale is a really good example for these weird chords. Because in that scale, our 7th chord can be a diminished chord, can be a minor chord, can be a major chord, can be an augmented chord. Our 1 chord can be a minor chord, can be sort of a diminished chord. Our 2 chord can be a diminished chord, can be sort of a Lydian thing. There are tons of hidden chords in that scale, and that's probably one of the reasons I'm used to these sorts of weird, secret, hidden chords. This is again something I highly suggest you do, because as I mentioned before, you can use these scales not only in a compositional way for modulations and songwriting, but you can also maybe use it like this. As I mentioned before, our Hungarian major scale is a major scale. It has a major 3rd and it has a natural 5th, so it makes up a major chord. But as we mentioned before, even though in the scale it isn't an F diminished chord, and we can also make this one an F half diminished or minor 7 flat 5. Next time you have a diminished chord like this, you can use the scale, just focus on the chord tones, and get this sort of weird outside sound. For many of you, it probably isn't as useful as, for instance, ways of altering your blues lyrics, but it is something that I use a lot and I think I should talk about and show it to you guys. And to be honest, there are a couple of other videos that I think can be really useful for you that I can't yet film or post, of other concepts related to this one that I can't yet post because some of you don't really have these building blocks yet, some weirder and more complicated stuff. So even if you think this video didn't really help you a lot, I can say, well, maybe it didn't help you a lot yet. Stay tuned to some of my next videos. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you in any way possible. And if it was, please leave me a comment below. Do you have anything to add to this discussion? Did you agree? Did you not agree? Was there something I missed? Something I should have said? Also, if you have any suggestions for videos, I have this dedicated series called Yate, You Ask, I Teach. I know, pretty boring, generic, and self-explanatory title, but as the name implies, I pretty much teach anything you guys have in the comment section below. Well, guitar and or music related, of course. So if you want to get a shout out and or you have something you want me to talk about, please leave it in the comment section below with the hashtag Yate. And if you've liked this video, I have a couple of other ones like this one where I talk about music theory related concepts and explain it so many of you guys can understand them and use them in your own ways. I have some other videos where I talk about technique and or ways for you to upgrade your guitar playing. And other times I just take a look at a specific clip from a guitar player that I either think is interesting or a little bit different from what they usually play. For instance, you could perhaps check out what's the deal with the melodic minor scale, or even maybe how to play over diatonic chords with just your pentatonic scale, or maybe Paul Gilbert's secret jazzy bebop lick. All of those videos will be on the description below, on the cards section right there, and on the annotations at the end screen in just a couple of seconds, so please stay tuned. And yeah, I guess that's it. Again, thank you so very much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, turn on all the notifications, follow me on social media, perhaps leave a comment for my 8 series, and yeah, cheers!